There is a language older than words, a voice that doesn't shout, but whispers softly in the stillness between moments. It speaks not through noise, but through presence, through breath, through being. We often mistake silence for emptiness, yet within it lives the intelligence of the universe, quiet, patient, purposeful. When you turn inward, when the distractions dissolve and you begin to hear yourself again, you don't withdraw from the world, you return to it fully. The storms you've weathered, the pauses that felt like endings, the waiting you couldn't understand, all of it was life, sculpting you with precision, preparing you for what only you could become. In the grand rhythm of existence, silence is not absence, it is alignment. A sacred pause in the music that gives the next note meaning. And when you finally tune in, you realize you were never lost. You were simply being woven into the exact place you were always meant to be. There's a reason silence makes so many of us uncomfortable. We fill every moment with something, noise, distractions, conversation, scrolling, because when it gets too quiet, we start to feel exposed. But the truth is, silence doesn't make you empty. It reveals what was already there. And that's exactly why it's so powerful. We've been taught to chase answers outside ourselves. Books, experts, podcasts, algorithms. We think the more information we absorb, the closer we'll get to clarity. But here's what no one tells you. Sometimes the answers don't come from learning something new. They come from listening to what's already within you. And that's where silence steps in. Not the absence of sound, but the presence of stillness. The kind of silence that makes space for something deeper to rise to the surface. You don't need more noise to know who you are. You need space to hear the voice underneath it all. The voice that's been whispering all along. But to hear it, you've got to get still enough to notice. You've got to step away from the performance, the striving, the constant need to fill the air, and instead drop into presence, because silence is not the absence of life. It's where life speaks most clearly. It's the language of your intuition, your wisdom, your alignment. You ever notice how nature moves in silence? The sun rises without applause. The trees grow without announcement. The tide comes in and it goes out, never needing to explain itself. And yet everything is in perfect rhythm. That's the energy you reconnect with when you allow yourself to sit in stillness. You stop pushing and start flowing. You stop performing and start being. The irony is, the quieter you get, the louder your truth becomes. The more you unplug from the external noise, the more the internal signal comes through. You begin to feel what's right for you. Not based on logic or likes or what other people are doing, but because something inside you says yes. That's the voice you can trust. That's the compass that never lies. And listen, this isn't about sitting in a cabin in the woods for 6 months or going on a silent retreat. This is about taking a breath in the middle of your day. It's turning off the noise for a few minutes just to check in with yourself. It's making space for presence, because in presence, you meet yourself again. And when you do, when you touch that quiet place within you, you remember something profound. You've never really been lost. You were just too surrounded by noise to hear your own direction. So if you're feeling stuck, overwhelmed, unsure, maybe it's not that you're doing something wrong. Maybe you just haven't been quiet enough to hear the answer. Because silence isn't where you go to escape the world. It's where you go to finally come home to yourself. Let's clear something up. Focusing on yourself is not selfish. That word has been twisted, turned inside out, and used to shame people into staying small. But here's the truth. Focusing on yourself is not about cutting people off or building walls. It's about finally remembering who you are when no one else is in the room. We're taught from a young age to serve, to please, to show up for everyone else. And sure, there's beauty in supporting others. But it becomes a problem when you're doing it at the expense of your own alignment, when your life becomes a reaction to what everyone else wants, expects, or needs from you. So let me ask you something. When was the last time you paused long enough to ask yourself, what do I actually want? Not what looks good, not what will make other people proud, not what checks the right boxes, but what feels like you. Because when you start focusing on yourself, what you're really doing is pulling your energy back from every direction. It's been scattered. You stop leaking time and attention on things that don't nourish you. You stop saying yes when your whole body is screaming a no, and little by little, you begin to return to your center. It's like tuning a radio dial. At first, there's static, discomfort, maybe even guilt. But then, click, you find your frequency. And from that place, life begins to move differently. You're not chasing anymore. You're not apologizing for your boundaries. You're not performing. You're aligned. And guess what happens when you're aligned? Everything else starts to respond to that. The people around you feel it. Your relationships get clearer, some deepen, some fall away. Opportunities show up that match the version of you that's finally living with intention. You stop feeling like you're being pulled in 1,000 directions because you've chosen a direction your own. Now, I'm not saying this is always easy. Some people will not understand your shift. They might call you distant, changed, unavailable, but that's okay. Let them, because what you're doing is healing, realigning, coming back into integrity with your own spirit. And if that makes other people uncomfortable, that's not your job to manage. This kind of focus doesn't pull you away from others. It actually helps you show up more fully from a place of wholeness, from a place of truth. And that version of you, that's the one who inspires, who leads, who loves without losing themselves. So no, focusing on yourself isn't running away. It's not selfish, it's sacred. It's the moment you stop orbiting around other people's expectations and start living from the inside out. Because when you finally return to yourself, everything else returns to its rightful place. Have you ever noticed how your outer world starts to reflect whatever's going on inside of you? Like when you're calm and clear, things just seem to click into place. And when you're anxious, overwhelmed, stretched too thin, it feels like everything around you starts to spin out too. That's not just coincidence. That's resonance. That's the universe echoing you back to yourself. We tend to think that the solution to our problems lies out there. Fix the job, change the relationship, get the schedule under control. But often, what really needs to shift is what's happening in here. Your energy, your mindset, your state of being. Because life doesn't just happen to you, it responds to you. The conversations you're attracting, the patterns that keep repeating, the opportunities you're seeing or missing, a lot of that is being shaped by the frequency you're carrying. And I know that might sound a little there, but think about it. When you're confident, grounded, present, don't people treat you differently? Don't you make different choices? That's not magic. That's alignment. Your energy has a ripple effect. And when you're focused inward, when you're tuning into your thoughts, your values, your feelings, you're cleaning up your frequency. You're sending a new signal out into the world. One that's authentic, one that draws in people and situations that match who you really are, not who you're pretending to be. But here's where it gets tricky. Most of us aren't aware of what we're broadcasting. We walk around reacting, people-pleasing, performing, and wondering why we keep running into the same walls. And it's because we haven't paused to ask, what am I radiating right now? What am I reinforcing? That kind of self-awareness only comes when you get quiet enough to notice what's going on beneath the surface. So if your world feels off, check in with your inner world first. Are you aligned with what you say you want? Are your choices matching your values? Or are you stuck in cycles that you've outgrown but haven't had the courage to break yet? This is why silence matters. It helps you hear what's actually going on inside of you. And self-focus matters because it gives you the power to shift it, not to control everything around you, but to recalibrate what you're putting out. Because when you shift internally, your life starts to shape itself around that new alignment. You're not just reacting anymore. You're responding with clarity. You're choosing what to carry and what to release. And life begins to meet you at that level. This isn't about perfection. It's about presence. It's about recognizing that your energy is a mirror. And when you take responsibility for what you're reflecting, you take ownership of what you begin to attract. So no, you're not crazy if things start to change when you change. That's exactly how this works. When your inner world rises, your outer world rises with it. Let's talk about the parts of life that don't feel graceful, the messy parts, the confusing pauses, the plans that fall apart, The moments where you're trying your best to stay positive, but it just feels like nothing's moving forward. We tend to think those are signs that we've done something wrong, that we've missed the mark. But what if they're not mistakes? What if they're just C? Life isn't one constant crescendo. It's a symphony. And every great piece of music has pauses, rests, dips, even silence. Not because something's broken, but because the space in between the notes is part of the song. It creates rhythm. It creates meaning. Without those contrasts, it would just be noise. When you're in one of those silent seasons, where you're not getting the feedback you hoped for, where everything feels slower than it should, it's easy to panic, to start forcing things, doubting yourself, wondering if it's ever going to work out. But what if that stillness is sacred? What if it's the part where something deeper is being composed beneath the surface? Think about it. How many times in your life have you looked back on something you thought was a setback and realized it was actually setting the stage for something better? We don't usually see it in real time. But that's the magic. That's the design. Life is working with you, not against you, even when it's uncomfortable. Those moments that feel like resistance, like failure, like doors closing, sometimes they're just redirects. Or they're pauses that are making room for you to catch up to your own growth. Because let's be real, transformation doesn't happen in the spotlight. It happens in the quiet, in the waiting, in the tension. And when you learn to trust those moments instead of fighting them, something incredible happens. You stop pushing against the flow and you start aligning with it. You realize you don't need to hustle to prove your worth. You don't need constant movement to make progress. You need presence. You need trust. You need to understand that even the challenge is part of the choreography. The most beautiful moments in life often come after the most uncertain ones. The things that seem to be falling apart are usually just rearranging themselves into something more aligned with who you've become. So, the next time you find yourself in the quiet, the stuck, the slow, the unknown, I want you to remember this. You're not being punished. You're being prepared. You're not off track. You're in the part of the song where the tempo shifts so the next verse can rise stronger. The silence isn't the end. It's the inhale before the breakthrough. Even the pauses are playing your melody. So stop resisting and start listening. Have you ever sat in silence long enough to really hear your own thoughts? Not the surface level stuff like what's on your to-do list or what someone said to you this morning, but the voice underneath all that. The one that speaks softly but carries a kind of truth that hits different. That's your intuition. And most of us are so distracted, so busy running from thing to thing that we barely hear it at all. We've gotten so used to noise. Podcasts in the background, notifications buzzing, constant input. It's like we're allergic to stillness. But the thing is, your intuition doesn't scream to get your attention. It waits patiently, quietly. And when you finally slow down long enough to meet yourself in silence, that's when the real guidance shows up. Your intuition is not some mystical, far-off thing. It's you, just without all the clutter. It's the wisdom your body holds. It's the gut feeling when something's off. It's the calm certainty when something feels right and you can't explain why. And it's always there, but it takes focus. It takes intention. It takes a willingness to stop outsourcing your truth and start sourcing it from within. You know those moments when something doesn't make sense on paper, but deep down, you just know it's the right move? That's not an accident. That's your internal compass. And when you learn to trust it, really trust it, you start making decisions that are aligned, not just logical. You stop second guessing every step because you're no longer looking for permission. You're following direction that's already wired into you. Here's the wild part. When you consistently carve out space to be with yourself in silence, you get better at reading those signals. You start recognizing the difference between fear and instinct, between a conditioned response and an intuitive one. And that clarity, it changes everything. Because now you're not just reacting, you're choosing consciously, confidently. This is why silence is so powerful. It's not about shutting the world out forever. It's about tuning in long enough to hear what your life has been trying to tell you all along. Because when you listen to your own inner wisdom, you stop chasing answers. you become the answer. And no, that doesn't mean every decision will be easy, but it means they'll be true. And that truth, it leads to peace, to confidence, to real power, the kind that doesn't come from controlling things, but from knowing exactly who you are and what direction is right for you. So if you've been feeling lost, confused, pulled in 100 directions, don't look harder out there. Look quieter in here. Make space, get still, tune in, because the voice you've been waiting for has been yours all along. Here's the truth most people miss. When you focus on yourself, when you really start listening, growing, healing, life doesn't just get better for you. It gets better for everyone around you. We're taught to measure our worth by how much we give, how much we do, how much we show up for others. But no one ever says, hey, what if the most powerful way to serve the world is by being fully yourself first? Think about it. The people who've impacted you the most, mentors, friends, even strangers, they didn't help you just by doing things for you. They helped because of who they were, grounded, clear, present, real. That's not an accident. That's what happens when someone does the work within. Their presence becomes a ripple. Their alignment gives you permission to align too. You want to know what creates real change? It's not just effort. It's embodiment. It's when your life becomes a reflection of your values, when your choices speak louder than your words. That kind of integrity, that's magnetic. That inspires. That heals without forcing anything. So when you focus on yourself, when you stop trying to fix, save, or prove, and start being, you give others the space to do the same. You stop micromanaging life and start moving with it. You stop trying to convince people of your worth and start walking like you know it. And yes, it takes courage, because stepping into that kind of energy means letting go of the masks. It means owning your story, even the parts that still feel raw. Well, about that honesty, that's where your real power lives. That's where connection happens. The more whole you become, the more you raise the frequency of every room you walk into. Not because you're louder, not because you're trying harder, but because your energy speaks for you. This is the shift. This is the quiet revolution. You want to make the world a better place? Start with your own corner. Clean up your thoughts. Heal your wounds. Set boundaries that protect your peace. Live with so much clarity that it challenges the people around you to get clear too. Because when you live aligned, you stop contributing to the chaos. Whoa. You stop playing into patterns that no longer serve. You stop settling for less and start expecting more, not just for yourself, but from the energy around you. You become a catalyst, not by force, not by control, but by example. That's the irony of silence and self-focus. It looks passive, but it's the most active, radical form of transformation there is. And when you truly get it, when you really embody it, things begin to shift within you, around you, through you. So don't underestimate what happens when you choose to rise inwardly. That's not small. That's legacy. That's leadership. Because the moment you change your energy, you change the entire atmosphere you walk into.